Did you know that owning a $500,000 investment property will reduce your taxable income by over $18,000 each year, saving you $3,600 a year at a 20% tax rate? Brand the Mortgage Man here, and if you're interested in buying your first investment property, it's important for you to understand how to find, finance, and benefit from owning that property. I've helped more than 10,000 homebuyers over my 20-plus year career, putting me in the top 1% of loan originators nationwide. It's with this experience, I'm going to share with you how to identify properties with positive cash flow by comparing the income it produces to the expenses for carrying it, the types of loans available to finance those properties, and the tax advantages of owning them. So let's get into identifying the properties. First of all, you're going to want to work with a realtor who has experience in finding rental properties. Properties that already have tenants are ideal because you know exactly what the cash flow is for those properties prior to you ever even going under contract on that home. But once you do find that property, you need to compare their rental income to the expenses for carrying that property. So what is rental income? Well, that's fairly simple. Rental income is the money you're collecting every single month from the tenants living in the property, right? Very easy. That's your income. What are your expenses for a rental property? Well, for one, if you're not paying cash, you're going to have a mortgage on that property and you're going to have mortgage payments. So you're going to be paying interest on the money you borrowed to buy that property, which means every single month you're going to have to make a payment to the lender for that property. So your mortgage payment is an expense. If you're gonna have a long-term rental, you probably wanna have a property management company helping you manage that property. Unless you're doing this full time and you can devote all of your time to what's going on with the property or properties that you may buy in the future, you're gonna wanna hire someone who does that professionally, and they charge fees to do that, which range anywhere from 8 to 12% of the monthly rental amount. You're gonna have maintenance and repairs. Just expect that the property is gonna have things that come up throughout the time you own it. It's not gonna be perfect from day one through the time you eventually sell in the future. You're gonna have maintenance, you're gonna have repairs, and because you own the property, you as the landlord are responsible for the maintenance and repairs, right? That's a benefit to the tenant that they don't have to cover those things, but they're a renter. You as the owner of the property and landlord need to cover those things, and it's a common rule to set aside 1% of the property value annually to use for those repairs. So on a $500,000 property, you'd wanna set aside roughly $5,000 every year to utilize for maintenance and repairs. Doesn't mean you're gonna use that money, right? Because if you set aside 1 year, you don't use it, it can roll to the next year. But you wanna be prepared for that. You don't wanna be in a position where you don't have the funds available for the maintenance and repairs if and when they come due. Utilities for the property: electric, water, gas, sewer. Now, the lease agreement that you draw up with your tenant may call for them to pay for those things. But there are times when you own a property and you have and you're a landlord and you have tenants where you are covering those things, right? So you want to keep that in mind. Those are other expenses you're going to have. Maybe lawn maintenance, pool, if there's a pool maintenance, right? So you want to consider those things as well. You're going to have property taxes for any property you buy. Even if you don't have a mortgage, you're still going to have property taxes that you have to pay on that property. They're paid annually, but you still want to break that down into what it would cost you on a monthly basis to figure out what your true expense is. Homeowner's insurance. Now, I don't recommend going uninsured if you own the property free and clear, but you aren't required to carry insurance if you don't have a mortgage. If you do have a mortgage on the property, you're going to be required to have homeowner's insurance on that property. That's an added expense to carrying the property. So just give you a really simple example. If you're collecting $4,000 per month in rent and your expenses are $3,000 per month, that means your net income every single month is $1,000, which is $12,000 per year in positive rental income, right? Very straightforward. The amount you're collecting in rent compared to the amount that you're paying out every single month, or in this case, let's call it year broken down into months, is if that number is greater as far as the income than the expenses, then you have positive cash flow. If your expenses are greater than your rental income, well, now you have negative cash flow and you're going to show a loss on that property, which is not ideal. Now, how do you buy a rental property, right? That's a common question. How is it that you can buy a rental property? Well, there's two common types of loans that are used to purchase rental properties. One is just your traditional conventional mortgage, right? Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac backed mortgage. Now, you need a 620 credit score, as you do with any conventional loan, to buy an investment property, and the minimum down down payment when using a conventional mortgage to purchase an investment property is 15%, right? So it's unlike a primary residence where you can put down 3% if you're a first-time home buyer or 5% if you owned a home in the past. And unlike a second home where you can put down 10%, a true investment property, meaning a property you're purchasing that you're going to be collecting rent on, the minimum down payment is 15%. Now, to be upfront with you, 15% down on a conventional loan to buy an investment property is still going to be expensive. It's going to come with a high interest rate, and you're likely going to have to pay discount points, meaning extra money up front to even get an interest rate for that purchase. The sweet spot to get the better interest rate and reduce your cost for the rate on an investment property using conventional mortgage would be to put 25% down. But if you're not in a position to make that happen, well, then 15% down is going to be the alternative. Now, with conventional financing, you can actually get a seller credit to use toward part of your closing costs. And what we see most of our clients do that are buying investment properties, if they're going with the minimal down payment option of 15%, is they're negotiating a 2% seller credit, which is the maximum credit you can receive on an investment loan using a conventional mortgage. And they're using that to pay the cost for their interest rate. Because if it costs 2 discount points, and just to be clear, if you want to learn more about what discount points are, make sure to subscribe and watch my videos where I explain exactly what discount points are, how much they cost, and what they do for you in terms of saving you money. But if you're having to pay 2 discount points to obtain an interest rate for an investment property with 15% down, the seller credit of 2%, if you negotiate that into your contract, can be used toward that cost. Therefore, you're not actually paying that money, and you're going to pay your down payment plus your other traditional closing costs, such as title fees, government charges, and so forth. Now, if you don't want to go the route of a conventional mortgage, or you can't qualify for a conventional mortgage, maybe you don't have the ability to show the income needed or the employment needed to qualify for a conventional mortgage, an alternative to that is a DSCR loan, which stands for debt service coverage ratio. And the way these loans work is we don't look at traditional income. We don't look at your employment. What we do look at is what the market rent for the property you're buying will be in comparison to what the carrying cost for that property would be. When I say carrying costs, I'm talking about the mortgage payment plus any taxes, insurance, and HOA fee if there's a homeowners association included. If the rent for the property is equal to or greater than the payment for that property, that's all we're concerned with. Now, there are DSCR programs that allow you to essentially have no DSCR, meaning that you don't have to be one-to-one rent versus carrying costs, but you need to be an experienced investor or past investor experience in order to qualify for that version of the program, and you need a larger down payment, right? With a DSCR loan, the minimum down payment is 20%. If you need to go the route where there's no DSCR, meaning that it doesn't matter what the rent is monthly in comparison to your payment, those typically are going to require you to put at least 30% down. Now, with these types of loans, although they're easier to qualify for because you're not proving income, you're not proving your employment, or technically you don't need income or employment to qualify for these, you are going to have limited options with DSCR if you have not owned a home in the past, meaning at least a primary residence, or you're a first-time investor. Most DSCR loans do not allow for someone who does not already own a primary residence to utilize the program. So just keep that in mind. There are very few available out there, and they're going to require larger down payments and make you jump through more hoops to qualify. Ideally, you already own a primary residence, and now you're looking to buy an investment property. You can utilize a program like this, putting down 20%, assuming it's a one-to-one, meaning dollar-to-dollar rent versus carrying cost scenario. Now, what are the advantages of owning a rental property? Well, for one, I would say the biggest advantage, right, or the most obvious advantage is you have extra income. Assuming you made a good purchase, we talked about identifying a property where it cash flows, meaning that the monthly rent is greater than the monthly expenses, right? That's going to give you more income. In our scenario, we talked about it initially, you were going to get an extra $12,000 per year in positive income. But one of the other advantages that you probably don't or may not know about, because it's more under the surface, is the ability to depreciate that property. Now, depreciating the property means reducing its value year after year. But We know property, real estate, appreciates in value. But in the eyes of the IRS, where you're going to utilize this depreciation, they actually allow you to reduce the value over a 27.5-year period. This is called straight line depreciation. And here's how it works. You take the cost of the property, let's call it $500,000 as we talked about earlier, and you're able to divide that over its useful life. The IRS considers the useful life of real estate to be 27.5 years, residential real estate to be 27.5 years. So if you took $500,000 divided by 27.5 years, its useful life, it gives you $18,182.82 per year in depreciation. Now, when you file your taxes showing this property, let's just say that you showed positive rent. I'm you just made a made-up number. Your positive rent was $20,000, right? That's what it showed. Well, when you add in the depreciation or subtract the depreciation from that $20,000 of $18,182.82, you're left with just over $1,800 in positive income that you would pay taxes on, right? So it reduced your tax liability substantially, right? That $18,182, if you're in a 20% tax bracket, is equal to $3,636 a year that you would save in income tax. That's real money in your pocket every year. So think about it. Over 27 years, or even over, let's call it over 20 years, just to make it simple, that's saving you $73,000 in tax, right? I'm not saying that's money you would just be giving to the IRS had you not had this property, had you not been able to depreciate this property over the 27.5 years. So that's a huge, huge advantage of owning a property outside of just collecting rental income. And if you want to learn more about how investors avoid paying taxes, make sure to check out my video about this topic. I actually get into more detail about the different forms of depreciation that you can utilize to benefit you in different ways. There are actually other ways to depreciate the property faster that will save you more money initially from the time you purchase that property. But watch that video to get more details and subscribe. And by understanding how to find, finance, and utilize the tax advantage of owning investment real estate, you'll be able to keep more money in your pocket when the time comes for you to purchase your own. If you find this information helpful, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you can continue educating yourself on real estate and mortgages. And make sure to leave a comment below if you have questions about your own scenario. I reply to 100% of the comments left on my videos.